Camera get you every time. So watch y'all block that shit up while y'all performing and shit all in front of the camera.
They were more than artists, more than collaborators. Tupac Shakur and Yaki Kadafi were bonded by bloodlines, revolution, and a loyalty deeper than the industry ever understood. Raised side by side in the shadow of the Black Panthers, they grew from boys into soldiers in a world that demanded silence.
This would never have happened to anybody else. It would never have gone this far. For a girl, they have no evidence on, and it's about to come out, and now my life is over.
But 1 week before his death, Tupac broke silence about Yaki Kadafi. This isn't just another unsolved mystery. It's a story of loyalty turned to suspicion, and two young men who may have sensed the danger closing in. More than blood. Before they became immortal icons of hip-hop and revolution, Tupac Amaru Shakur and Yafiu Akiele Fula, known later to the world as Yaki Kadafi, were simply two boys shaped by the fire of political struggle and fierce family bonds. Their connection ran deeper than friendship or music. It was forged in a shared heritage of defiance, resilience, and survival. Though born 6 years apart, their lives moved in step, connected by a bond that went deeper than blood. Their mothers, Afeni Shakur and Yasmin Fula, were warriors in their own right, both steadfast members of the Black Panther Party, a revolutionary organization that fought relentlessly against systemic oppression in the United States during the late 60s and 70s. The lives of these two women were marked by sacrifice and courage, and their shared struggles would inevitably shape the destinies of their sons. In the early 1980s, the two families didn't just share beliefs, they shared a home in New York, with Afeni and Yasmin living under the same roof. The neighborhoods of Harlem and the Bronx were the backdrop to this unique childhood, places where politics and culture were inseparable. To the boys, the streets were a playground littered with lessons of survival and activism. They grew up hearing protests instead of lullabies, and learned about justice through community meetings. Tupac stepped naturally into the role of big brother, protector, and guide for young Yaki, whose own father was absent, imprisoned for his revolutionary activities. They weren't bound by blood, yet they were family in every way that counted, and they would be just as close as they grew up, made a name for themselves, and eventually died. The making of Kadafi. Yaki Kadafi and Tupac Shakur were both important figures in 1990s hip-hop, but their connection went beyond just making music together. Tupac was already a big name, known for his honest lyrics and activism, while Yaki was building his reputation in the underground rap scene with his group Dramacidal. In 1995, Tupac invited Yaki and other members of Dramacidal to form the Outlaws, a brotherhood that represented more than just a rap group. It was a global revolutionary family bonded by shared struggles and political defiance. Yaki's sharp, introspective lyrics and quiet intensity stood out, earning him a prominent place on Tupac's landmark album, All Eyes on Me. Tracks like All 'Bout You and When We Ride showcased the powerful synergy between the two, weaving narratives of loyalty and survival. As Tupac's fame and influence soared, the pressures around him grew. Paranoia and tension crept into his life, straining friendships and alliances. Yet, through it all, Yaki Kadafi remained a constant pillar of trust and stability. Those close to Tupac often noted how he singled out Yaki as one of the few people he truly trusted. Their bond wasn't just about music or friendship, it was deeply rooted in shared history, family loyalty, and a revolutionary mission. Beyond the music, Tupac was dreaming bigger, envisioning production companies, record labels, and political activism aimed at uplifting marginalized communities. In these ambitions, he entrusted Yaki and Yasmin Fula with key roles, signaling a bond that transcended friendship into family and shared purpose. Together, they represented a fusion of art, activism, and enterprise, ready to change the world from the ground up. Yaki's loyalty wasn't conditional or performative. It was a steady force that Tupac could count on, even when everything else seemed uncertain. This kind of support wasn't common in their world, where trust was often fleeting and alliances fragile. As one close to them put it, their bond of love was an extraordinary one, throughout their entire lives. Tupac, besides myself, was the only constant Yaki had in his life. Tupac always teaching, Yaki always rebelling. Their relationship was more than just artist and collaborator. It was like brotherhood. Even before the Las Vegas shooting, their bond had been tested through difficult times, such as when Tupac was in prison in 1995, serving time for an assault conviction stemming from a 1993 case in New York. Despite the controversy surrounding the charges, Tupac was sentenced to roughly a year in prison. During this time, Yaki was one of the few people who regularly visited him. He made the effort to maneuver through strict security checks and long waits just to spend time with Tupac. During these visits, Yaki didn't only offer support but also brought news from the outside, updates on their music, and encouragement to keep Tupac focused on his future plans. These visits were crucial for Tupac, as they were moments to talk through ideas and plans. Napoleon, another member of the Outlaws, remembered, Yaki never left Tupac's side. Even in the hardest times, he was there, not just for the music, but for the man. This loyalty showed in many ways. People close to Tupac also noticed how much he trusted Yaki. Suge Knight, Tupac's bodyguard and the head of Death Row Records, once said, Yaki was like family to Tupac. When everything was falling apart, Yaki was the one he leaned on. Their connection wasn't just professional, it was built on trust and loyalty that lasted through many challenges. That deep trust would soon be tested in the most brutal way imaginable, on a night that would change hip-hop forever. The night of the shots. The night of September 7, 1996 remains etched as one of the darkest and most consequential moments in hip-hop history. The details surrounding that evening are still examined and debated, shrouded in questions and conspiracy theories that refuse to fade. Tupac Shakur, already an established icon in the music world, was driving through the vibrant, neon-lit streets of Las Vegas in a black BMW. He was accompanied by Marion Suge Knight, the powerful CEO of Death Row Records, who also served as Tupac's bodyguard. Their destination was Club 662, a hotspot closely linked to the Death Row music empire and the intense rivalries that had engulfed the rap industry at the time. Following them was the rest of the Outlaws, including Yaki Kadafi. According to court testimony given by Malcolm Greenidge, better known by his stage name E.D.I. Mean, who was also a member of the Outlaws, they were approaching the intersection of Flamingo Road and Koval Lane when the attack took place. Tupac had been interacting with a group of women who pulled up alongside their vehicle, likely inviting Tupac and Suge Knight to the club. At that moment, a white Cadillac moved up beside Tupac's BMW. Suddenly, an arm extended out of the Cadillac's rear window, and gunfire erupted. Allegedly, 13 shots were fired within a span of less than 15 seconds. Tupac was hit 4 times, with bullets piercing his chest, arm, and pelvis. Kadafi was an eyewitness to the attack, watching the shooter's actions unfold in real time. What happened next became a tangled web of secrecy and frustration. Kadafi stepped forward as the critical eyewitness, prepared to identify the shooter to Las Vegas police. Tragically, that confidentiality was breached almost immediately. Media outlets leaked his identity, exposing him to the very threats he sought to avoid. Meanwhile, the Las Vegas police faced intense scrutiny. Officials claimed they provided Kadafi with photographs of possible suspects, but alleged that he failed to follow up or cooperate further. Contradictions and confusion abounded. Kadafi's mother reportedly accused the police of using her brother's exposed identity as a smokescreen to cover their investigative shortcomings. Whether born from negligence, incompetence, or something more sinister, the outcome was devastating. The man who held the last key to solving the shooting was left vulnerable, his silence forced by circumstances beyond his control. That night marked a turning point. It was not just the loss of Tupac Shakur, but the unraveling of trust, the exposing of hidden dangers lurking within their circle. Kadafi's role as the last eyewitness, once a beacon of hope, became a source of peril. The shadow of that shooting would stretch far beyond the streets of Las Vegas, echoing through the music, the culture, and the hearts of those who loved them. Napoleon later recalled the days after Tupac's passing. He described a man slipping away not just in spirit, but in will. "I was with him every day," Napoleon reportedly said. "And every day I could see it. He was out of it. He didn't want to live anymore." In the days and years following, much has been revealed about that night through court proceedings. During the trial of Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, a member of the Southside Compton Crips who was eventually arrested and charged with Tupac's murder, E.D.I. Mean testified about the moments after the shooting. He said Tupac instructed him to get down because he feared police officers might start shooting as well. Greenidge moved quickly to the passenger side of Tupac and Suge Knight's car and tried to check on Tupac's condition, asking if he was okay. Tupac's chilling response was, "Get on the ground, they're going to shoot you." Greenidge also recounted the tense moments that followed as police arrived at the scene. Officers detained members of the entourage, including Greenidge himself, Kadafi, Tupac's cousin Katari Castro Cox, and a security guard named Frank. Greenidge described a moment when a police officer pointed a gun at him and ordered him to get on the ground, a command he complied with to avoid further escalation. Meanwhile, Suge Knight was urging paramedics to check on Tupac, who appeared surprisingly calm despite the severity of his wounds. Tupac was rushed to the hospital. The 6 days following his shooting stretched like an unbearable eternity. His condition fluctuated between fragile hope and sinking despair. Everyone hoped he would pull through, but life had other plans. The final 1 week. That final week in the hospital was not only a medical emergency, it became a moment suspended between life and death, played out under the harsh fluorescent lights of a trauma ward and the scrutiny of the world outside. When Tupac Shakur arrived at the University Medical Center in Las Vegas on the night of September 7, 1996, he had already lost massive amounts of blood from multiple gunshot wounds, one of which had ravaged his right lung. Emergency surgery was launched almost immediately in a desperate attempt to save his life. The damage was extensive. Doctors were forced to perform a pneumonectomy, removal of the entire right lung, a radical and high-risk procedure. To reach the injury quickly, they had to make incisions through his chest, slicing directly through the inked words, "Thug Life," tattooed across his torso. A cruel irony considering how much that phrase had come to define his philosophy, his art, and his survival instinct. The days that followed were tense and emotionally punishing. Tupac was placed in the hospital's intensive care unit, tethered to ventilators and surrounded by a maze of IVs, monitors, and life support machines. The trauma of the shooting had caused catastrophic damage internally. Shredded tissue, fragmented ribs, and fragile organs fighting to function with one lung. Each hour brought its own crisis. He suffered from recurrent internal bleeding and respiratory complications, both common and often deadly outcomes in cases involving such extensive chest trauma. Doctors issued a cautious prognosis, a 50-50 chance at best. Even among seasoned trauma surgeons, cases like his were rarely survivable. Convulsions began to set in, violent and sudden episodes that rattled both staff and family. These weren't mere muscle spasms, but signs that his nervous system was overwhelmed, and his body was struggling to maintain vital functions. Each episode pushed his already frail system closer to collapse. The medical team, comprised of trauma specialists, pulmonologists, and critical care nurses, raced to stabilize him, working around the clock in shifts, refusing to surrender him to fate. Outside his hospital room, security had been dramatically increased. Fears of retaliation, further violence, or even a media frenzy prompted law enforcement to set up a perimeter. Tupac's fame, his ongoing feud with East Coast artists, and the volatile mood of the streets added an unpredictable element to an already fragile situation. Only select visitors were permitted through the cordon: his mother, Afeni Shakur, some members of his death row entourage, and trusted friends. Their expressions, their quiet prayers, and their helplessness filled the room with a tension even thicker than the antiseptic air. Hope began to fade by the 6th day. Despite every measure, his organs began to fail. His body, weakened and battered beyond recovery, could no longer withstand the trauma. On September 13, 1996, surrounded by machines, loved ones, and a city holding its breath, Tupac Shakur was pronounced dead. The struggle in that final week wasn't just a medical one. It was the last battle of a man who had survived bullets before, survived prison, survived poverty, and carried a target on his back every day he breathed. This time, his body couldn't keep up with his legend. As the days passed, Tupac's health deteriorated. The complex nature of his injuries, combined with the critical function of his lungs and heart, placed immense strain on his body. Ultimately, at approximately 4:03 p.m. on September 13th, Tupac Shakur succumbed to respiratory failure and cardiopulmonary arrest. This final week marked a painful and relentless battle against overwhelming injuries. Despite the efforts of doctors and those around him, Tupac's body was unable to recover. His passing left a profound impact on the music community and everyone who had stood by him during those difficult days. The truth Tupac tried to tell. In the final days before his death, Tupac Shakur was not the same defiant, outspoken figure the public had come to know. Beneath the bravado was a man carrying the weight of something much heavier than fame or legal trouble. Those around him began to notice a change. He was quieter, more withdrawn, and intensely serious. It wasn't just the stress of fame or the physical pain from prior injuries. Tupac was deeply unsettled, as if he knew the clock was running out. His instincts, honed by a life steeped in survival, told him that danger wasn't just on the horizon, it was already among them. He believed that the violence he and those in his orbit were experiencing wasn't coincidental. In his mind, it wasn't simply the cost of being in the rap game or the result of random beefs. It was planned, targeted, and coming from people who were supposed to have his back. Tupac reportedly began warning those close to him to stay alert, to watch each other carefully, and to prepare for something dark and calculated. Paranoia to some, but to Tupac, it was survival instinct. And amid this thickening atmosphere of distrust and impending violence, one name stood apart from the rest: Yaki Kadafi. Tupac's trust in Kadafi wasn't casual or circumstantial. It was rooted in years of shared experience, brotherhood, and blood ties. They were godbrothers, linked through their families and bonded by their time together in the Outlaws. In one of his final known conversations, Tupac, already in pain and speaking with unusual gravity, reportedly said, "He's the one only I still trust." Yaki saw the whole thing, and Yaki is not going to lie for anybody because he knew this was coming. That statement was far more than a show of loyalty. It was a coded message. By naming Kadafi not only as the one he still trusted, but also as someone who knew this was coming, Tupac was suggesting that the ambush in Las Vegas wasn't spontaneous. It was expected by some, perhaps even orchestrated by people close enough to predict or witness it. The fact that Kadafi was there that night, that he saw the whole thing, and that Tupac believed he would speak honestly about it, regardless of pressure or threats, shows how high the stakes had become. In a world where secrets could be deadly and silence was often bought, saying out loud that someone would not lie, especially someone as close as Kadafi, was both an act of faith and a potential liability. Tupac may have known that such honesty could put Kadafi in danger, and tragically, he may have been right. Just 2 months after Tupac's death, Kadafi was also killed, under murky circumstances, shot execution style, and left with questions that have never been fully answered. So when Tupac singled out Kadafi in those final days, he wasn't just expressing trust, he was pointing to someone he believed held the truth. It was a truth that may have threatened powerful people, and it was a truth that died with him. By publicly acknowledging Yaki's presence and knowledge of what happened that night, Tupac broke a code of silence that had long surrounded the incident. It was a call to action, a signal that the truth could be exposed if Yaki spoke out. Tupac seemed to place his hope in Yaki's integrity and courage, to reveal the facts that others might hide or distort. If Yaki were to speak openly about what he witnessed, it could unravel a complex conspiracy, probably involving powerful figures within and outside the music industry. Such revelations would not only have legal consequences, but would have sent shockwaves through the hip-hop community and beyond, challenging entrenched power structures. However, Tupac's hopes were never realized. After Tupac's death, Yaki became one of the few people with the ability to reveal critical details about the shooting and those responsible. Instead, Yaki's death just weeks later silenced him permanently, eliminating the chance for the full truth to come out. This sequence has led many to believe that their deaths were connected and part of a larger effort to suppress the facts. The loss of Yaki as a witness meant the truth Tupac tried to protect died with him. Theories and speculations. After Tupac's death. After Tupac Shakur was killed, many different theories and speculations emerged to explain who was responsible and why. The official explanation was that it was a gang-related drive-by shooting, but many people believed the full truth was more complicated. One common theory is that Tupac's murder was part of ongoing conflicts between the Bloods and Crips gangs. Tupac was linked to the Bloods through Death Row Records and Suge Knight, who was driving the car when Tupac was shot. Some believe the shooting was retaliation for earlier attacks or part of the East Coast-West Coast rap feud. The murder of Tupac's rival, the notorious b.i.g, months later added fuel to this theory, with many thinking the two killings were connected as part of a cycle of gang violence. Another theory suggests that there was betrayal from within Tupac's own circle. Some think that people close to Tupac may have been involved in setting him up or allowing the attack to happen. This idea comes from the way the investigation was handled, the lack of cooperation from witnesses, and Tupac's own warnings about betrayal. Tupac naming Yaki Kadafi as someone he trusted added to suspicions that important information was being hidden. There are also claims involving law enforcement corruption. Some believe that police or officials may have been involved in covering up parts of the case, or even had a role in the attack. This is based on reports of poor investigation, leaked witness identities, and delays in solving the case. These suspicions feed into a larger narrative of institutional failure and possible complicity. One popular but highly disputed speculation is that Tupac faked his own death. Some fans think Tupac staged the shooting to escape danger and start a new life in secret. This theory points to alleged sightings after his death and inconsistencies in official reports. However, there is no credible evidence supporting this claim. More recently, the arrest of Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, a gang member charged with Tupac's murder years later, brought renewed attention to the case. Davis denies involvement, and his trial continues to stir debate and questions but has not provided a final answer. Overall, these theories reflect the complex environment around Tupac's life and death, including gang conflicts, possible betrayal, law enforcement issues, and the impact of his legacy. Despite many investigations and rumors, the full truth about Tupac's murder remains unclear, and with it, so does whatever secret Kadafi died trying to protect. Two graves, one bond. From early on, Tupac Shakur and Yaki Kadafi's lives were closely linked in ways that went beyond friendship or professional collaboration. Both were born into a generation marked by social and economic struggles, shaped by the legacy of civil rights movements, urban challenges, and a culture that demanded resilience and loyalty as survival skills. Yet their story ended abruptly and tragically. Tupac's murder in September 1996 was soon followed by Yaki's death just weeks later. Official reports attempted to frame these as separate incidents, Tupac the victim of a drive-by shooting, and Yaki the unintended casualty of a gang-related overdose. There are suggestions of hidden truths, dangers too great for public exposure, and alliances broken behind closed doors. It appears that both Tupac and Yaki were entangled in webs of power, loyalty, and conflict that extended far beyond the music industry. Their deaths seem to carry the weight of warnings ignored and justice denied. What remains clear, however, is the significance of Tupac's final public acknowledgement of Yaki Kadafi. In his last days, Tupac identified Yaki as the one person he still trusted, the one who knew the truth and could expose the reality behind the violence. But that trust was not enough to break through the barriers of silence and fear that surrounded their world. The story of Tupac and Yaki is one of a deep bond cut short by violence and secrecy, leaving behind two graves and a legacy of questions that remain unanswered to this day. Do you believe Kadafi was silenced because he saw too much, or was it just a tragic coincidence? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching this video with us, and catch you in the next one.